service coordinator.
Watch this entire
And you'll recognize it.
How's that on your desk?
This fountain is in there.
Okay.
First, when they pay this, you're not gonna be this.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Pitt County Board of Commissioners meeting for May 2nd. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and call the meeting to order. And if we could please,
Do it again.
There it is. It's not letting me vote.
if we could please stand for the invocation and pledge.
We'll face the flag. Oh, you want to do the invocation first? Okay. I apologize. Let's bow our heads. Most gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for another beautiful day in Eastern North Carolina. We thank you for our health. We thank you for the people who are willing to come and speak for the government of our county and guide us in our development and in our growth. We ask it in your humble name. Amen.
Face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This time, entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to excuse Commissioner Colson.
Second.
It's been moved in second. If we could vote on the excusal, Mr. Commissioner Colson. Motion passes, and I believe there was a motion and a second on approval of the agenda. Madam Clerk. That motion also passes. Madam Manager, do we have any public addresses to the board?
We have one person signed up to speak this evening, Robert Sutton, the attorney.
Yes, Pitt County welcomes all comments on matters of public concern. Each person will be allowed up to 3 minutes to speak. A speaker representing a group of individuals in attendance will be allowed up to 5 minutes. A total of 30 minutes is set aside for public addresses to the board. Please state your name and address prior to speaking.
Very well. Thank you. Good evening, Board,
Good evening.
Town Manager, County Manager, I'm sorry. Good to see you all. Thank you for this opportunity tonight. My name is Robert Sutton. I live at 4325 Dickinson Avenue. That is at the halfway point, if you're familiar with it, between Frog Level Crossroad and Red Oak Crossroad. I've talked to several of you up here already. Almost every one of you that I called me back. I'd like to thank you for that. That speaks highly of the board. It's sincere appreciation. Thank you all. The road I live on is a heavily traveled corridor for vehicles that are hauling waste to the Pitt County Transfer Station on Allen Road. What I've noted over the last few years is the problem with trash falling out into the roadway and onto my property has continually gotten worse and worse. Look, I live on a heavily traveled road. I expect to pick up trash. I do not expect to pick up trees, stumps, soiled linens, adult diapers, and not just a few, but I'm talking about several bags at a time. And the icing on the cake was a bathtub with a walk-in shower. That's located on the side of my house, on the side of my property. Again, I live beside my mother and my aunt. They live together. They're in their 80s. They share in cleaning this up. And I certainly believe with all my heart that no one on this board thinks that it is the duty of an 80 or 86-year-old lady to clean up Pitt County's refuse. This is a problem. It's not just at my house and my property. I've noticed it getting worse and worse throughout the county. But my particular area is a bottleneck, and it continues to get worse. The cause of the problem is very simple. It's improperly secured or unsecured loads. You know, I always like people, when they give me a problem, to give me a solution. Solutions are not as complicated as you think on some things. I think there's a couple of things here. And talking with Mr. Rhodes, he tells me that you guys are looking at an educational campaign. I think that would be wonderful. I think it will help out quite a bit. I think it will particularly help out the private citizen. I am not convinced it will help out commercial haulers, for the sheer reason that they're already aware of the rules and laws on the books. And certainly if they're not abiding by them now, I don't know that they will in the future. And I have a lot of friends that do that. I've talked with your enforcement staff. I'd like to commend, you know, the people that you've hired. Mr. Demery has been a great source of help. Deputy Whaley also. They have helped me as much as humanly possible with the time they have. And I want to talk to you about the time they have. It is limited. It is difficult for Deputy Whaley to cover 14 sites and the transfer station and look into any issue that's out there. He is stretched as thin as humanly possible. In terms of enforcing something, can I call a timeout? I'm almost through. But in terms of the enforcement, the best place to do that is going to be at the county landfill. It is difficult to do at that site. Properly doing it there, you're probably going to have traffic backed out into Allen Road with the single person working at that landfill in that way, at the weigh scale. I tell you all this because I think this is something that can be, like you hear so often, it can be approached and mitigated with additional resources. And that is what I ask you to consider tonight. I know you're just beginning your budget process. Please give some consideration to the ability to what these guys have in front of them and offering them some assistance, and the rest of the county at the same time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
No other people are signed up to speak.
All right, thank you. Could we now move on to the county manager's budget presentation? And Mr. Attorney, if you could pass down your timer, I'd like to be in control of that. Thank you.
If I may, I'll walk around to the podium to present. Good evening, Board of Commissioners. I am excited to share with you my first budget presentation as your county manager this evening. We have a PowerPoint to go through with you, and then just when you start to get tired of hearing from me, I'm going to call up Brian. He's going to talk about your capital improvement projects, and then I'll finish up your budget. It is a shorter presentation than you've heard in years past, so bear with me as we provide this overview for the current proposed year. I'll start by sharing some of my objectives when we started this budget process. And this has been, as a new manager, a learning experience, an exciting time to learn about the why behind every number in our budget. And so I think this budget, as opposed to other years' budgets, probably got some heightened level of scrutiny because we asked so many questions. And what you'll get today is really a very high-level overview and the bottom line numbers, and really not a reflection of the months of work that has gone into preparing this budget document for your consideration and discussion this week, and then ultimately consideration for approval next month in June. And we started this process really in last year, but in January you talked about your capital improvement projects and you gave us guidance there. And then immediately following that, the budget submitted, each department submitted proposed budgets. And Brian and his finance team, Denise and Kelly, and I went through all of those budgets line by line, and this is the summary that you'll get today leading up to this point. We met with every department head and talked to them about their requests and their needs, and then based upon that, adjusted numbers to meet these objectives that are in the slide in front of you. And those objectives are funding in accordance with this board's priorities that you set earlier this year. To maintain the tax rate, did not consider a tax increase in balancing your budget this year. to look at fee changes to be sure that they would be efficient fee changes, not fees for the sake of generating revenue, but fee changes that made sense within our current operation to cover costs as we serve the citizens. Employee investments. I think this is the right time to invest in our workforce. To respect the budget drivers, which I'll talk to you about a little bit on the next slide, and to create a balanced budget that allows us to live within our means. Those were my objectives as we started this process, and as we as a team worked through this process, I think a theme came forward. I don't know that your budgets years past have always had a theme, but the theme that I believe kind of characterizes this budget is valuing our employees. This is the year to do that, and you'll see in my recommended budget how I believe this budget accomplishes that. This is not a year for growth or expansion. It's not a reval year from a tax perspective. But it is a year that I believe is appropriate to value our employees in a way that we've not done so as of late. You recall your priorities, starting with education number 1, public safety, economic development, human services, health and safety, facility and space needs, infrastructure, and recreation. You will see in this proposed budget that the money follows the priorities. So your highest portion of your budget will relate to education, followed by public safety. So to me, when we talk about what our priorities are, our dollars ought to match those priorities, and the budget that I'll present to you this evening does exactly that. And in addition, it invests in our employees. And these are some of the things that I think, let me back up for a second and talk a little bit about those budget drivers. What this budget does is it increases funding for both Pitt County Schools and Pitt Community College. It invests in our employees. It covers the increased costs of jail medical. It covers, in this next year, there will be 27 pay periods. That happens about once a decade, but it costs money from a budgeting perspective. And most importantly, I believe this budget is sustainable in an uncertain economy. You know, not everybody thinks the economy is uncertain. If you ask somebody what the forecast looks like 6 months from now, they'll tell you. But that if you ask somebody else, they may say something totally different. So we prepared this budget with the assumption that we need sustainable budgeting in an uncertain economy. And to me, that translates into conservative, very conservative revenue projections and reasonable, non-expansive expenditures. So conservative revenues, hold the line on expenditures, and if we come out better, that's great. But I don't want on our watch, on my watch, to be coming back mid-year saying we need to make some adjustments. I believe this budget does that. And what I'm really excited to talk about is the investment in our employees. I would like this board in the recommended budget to keep the switch on for pay for performance. That's our merit pay. That means if you have a performance evaluation, you have done what you are tasked to do in terms of your objectives for your work year. Everybody has a performance evaluation that if you meet satisfactory or above, you will get either a 1.2 or 2.4% salary increase on your salary continuing. In years past, due to budget constraints, we've had to turn that switch off and not offer it. It's on right now. Our folks received it last year, and I'd like to keep that on. I'm also recommending the most generous market adjustment, cost of living adjustment, I like to call it a market adjustment, that we have ever had in our recorded time of market adjustments. And so I'm recommending a 4% market adjustment across the board, so that every Pitt County employee's salary will raise by 4%. And those that are not here yet, those that we're trying to attract, that base salary will raise by 4% at the get-go. And then if you have satisfactory performance, we'll do 1.2% or 2.4%. That difference is in how long you've been here and where you are on the pay scale, so that we can begin to make a significant dent in having salaries that are competitive and will both attract and retain our employees. We can afford that in our current, the budget is balanced with these recommendations. I also, from the perspective of retaining our employees, I would like, and I'm recommending that we reinstitute longevity pay. Longevity pay went away in 2010, the end of 2010, when the economy was very tight and we couldn't afford it any longer. Longevity pay is a percentage of your salary if you've been with the county 10 years or longer. We know that today's workforce doesn't necessarily stay long-term in one place, but to encourage folks to stay here whom we've invested in, I'd like to turn the longevity switch back on and start offering longevity pay to our employees who have been loyal to us for 10 years or longer, and I'd like that to be retroactive back to January 1st, 2011, so that everyone is treated fairly, and they have a reason to stick with us, right? That if you're willing to stick with Pitt County government for 10 years or more, we're gonna reward that. And if you're here at year 7 or year 8 and we've invested in you and you're doing a great job, I don't want you to look anywhere else. I want you to stay with us and I want to reward you for that. So this recommended budget includes longevity pay for all employees moving forward so that we can both attract it as a benefit and retain those that we have. We are required to make a retirement contribution increase that affects an employee's bottom line at retirement. It is required, but we have balanced that into the budget. And then we are also, despite skyrocketing health care costs on our self-insured health insurance plan, we are not recommending any insurance premium increases for our workforce. I remember all the years that I was an employee, and if I got a 1.5% cost of living increase, my health insurance premium went up more than that, right? So this year, we're talking about market adjustments, pay for performance, and longevity pay with no increase in your health insurance premium. And what I'm also excited about is our health insurance is currently tiered. Employee coverage is covered by the county. There's a plan for a parent and child, parent and spouse, but if you have more than one child, you have to go to the most expensive family plan. And that's an expensive plan. It's $710 a month. That's a lot of money for folks. And if you are a single parent with multiple children, that impacts your disposable income. And so we are offering this year a parent-children plan, which is about $200 less than the family plan. So if you are a single parent working for Pitt County government with multiple children, you will realize a significant cost savings to cover them in health insurance. And we hope that that will both attract folks, keep our folks here, and add value to the work that they're doing and the income that they're making. That's how I propose that we invest in our employees this year and show that they are valued. We have one of the most incredible workforces that I could imagine, from top to bottom. We're never, I've said this many times over, we're never gonna buy our way out of a labor shortage crisis. But we can do our best to make sure we have the best work environment and so that our employees feel valued and appreciated. And I hope that this is a step in that direction. So, a balanced budget, when it's all done, last year, your current budget that you're sitting in, we're calling the 21-22 budget, was $281 million, $450,394. This year, I'm recommending a budget of $288 million, $329,833, as a balanced budget to meet the needs of the county. It's only a 2.4% increase year over year, and it covers the expansion for our employees while holding everything else fairly constant. I was thrilled to see the number that low year over year. This is not a growth year. Oops. Okay, so a little bit about the process and our original departmental requests and the general fund. We had, from the general fund, requested from our departments $217 million. In order to make our budget balance without a tax increase, and while maintaining our core services and priorities, that required shaving off about $12 million from new money requests. And that's what we in the finance team did by looking at things very carefully, understanding the why behind every number that was asked for, and made our level best decisions on what made sense to satisfy your priorities, and follow our mission to enhance the health, safety, and welfare of those in our community in a friendly, cost-effective, and efficient manner. And so I believe we can do that with a general fund allocation of $205 million this year, 205,786, 718, which is slightly less than last year's. Because when you really start to look behind the numbers, you discover places where you can make cuts. And that's what I did, while still covering the increased drivers. We can do all of that with no change in your tax rate. So your current tax rate is 68.41 cents. Your new tax rate, as I'm recommending it, would be 68.41. And so what does that look like in terms of revenues? Talked about conservative budgeting for revenues. And this slide shows you the pie, and I know you've seen this graphic before, with 50% of our money coming from our ad valorem taxes, and then down the line, I'm not going to read it all to you, but it's in your package, and you'll have all of this to digest, plus the additional information that's in your notebook over this next week and until the budget hearing next month. But our revenues are projected in this budget at $288 million based on that conservative estimation of our incoming revenues. Now, ad valorem taxes, that's a pretty set formula. I think we'll probably hit that fairly close. We know what our collection rate is. We know what those numbers are. Other taxes, those include things like sales tax. Could that number have been larger because sales tax revenues are very strong right now? It probably could have been. I just don't know that sales tax revenues are going to continue to stay this strong if we see inflationary effects continue the way some might project that they are. So that's a very conservative number. And if you go down the lines where there was discretion, those numbers were put in lower than they potentially could have been. And if mid-year we are far in excess, then I'd love to talk about spending it. But I think you are smart to remain conservative as we start July 1. So no change in your tax rate. There is a 4.09% increase in your base. This is not the amount of tax dollars collected. This is your property valuation base in a non-revaluation year. Last year you had about 15.1 in total property value within Pitt County. This year you have about 15.7. So if you look at natural growth at about 4%, everything else shouldn't be growing more than 4% if we're going to stay living within our means. And if you see the consistency there, your market adjustment for all salaries is what I'm recommending is at 4%. I think that's really the gauge. I don't think we ought to be living beyond our natural growth in the base. I don't think that's sustainable. But as that base continues to grow, because county officials do a good job in trying to grow that base, then so can the benefits come to the employees. Want to talk about I talked about efficient fee changes, and you will hear, and I'll talk about your presentations in a minute. There were more fee changes requested than you will find in my recommended budget. And so these are the fees that I am recommending that the county adopt. I'm recommending that we increase our fees slightly in EMS transport. Why? Because we have always gone by Palmetto GBA, and they are the authority on what transport fees ought to be. And we followed that every year, and those are the current rates from Palmetto GBA. They're one of the largest Medicare administrative contractors in the United States. And so I think, consistent with prior practice, we ought to keep our rates consistent at that benchmark. I like having an objective basis for any fee that we provide. So we just don't pick a fee because we think it's the right number. In this particular case, in order for our fees not to be too low or too high, this is the objective basis, and I recommend increasing those fees in that fashion. Solid waste and recycling is an enterprise fund, as you know, and there are recommended fees there in order to keep up with costs and with market. It's a very successfully run enterprise fund, which means your revenues have to match your expenditures, and each year you have to look to make sure you're hitting the mark. So we are requesting modest increases in C&D as construction and demolition waste, clean wooden pallets, commercial concrete block, and shingles. to absorb the costs that we currently have. In environmental health, you'll hear from public health that they may want some additional fee increases. What I'm recommending is that we go ahead and offer a food safety manager's course. Right now, our current restaurateurs don't have a sufficient availability of courses right here in our own community. We can provide those courses, which we don't currently do. It's optional. If a person who owns a restaurant takes one of these courses, that's an added bonus when their sanitation score, when they're being graded as a restaurant. And so we'd like to offer that class right here in our community because it goes back to that mission and our priorities. This all comes back to serving our community. And this program will better serve our local community by offering a course here, and that's a reasonable proposed fee for the class instruction, textbook, exam, or proctoring the exam only.
Where would that be? Like at the community college?
Yes, environmental health would oversee that at various locations that would be convenient for the folks attending. Yes. We also have some new fees that are required by law. I can't do anything about those, but North Carolina law changed, and we now have to have new fees for display, spa permits, and their re-inspections, and those proposed fees are on your screen. There's been a recommendation, and you can hear more from Public Health if you'd like to, about the reasons from the later this week, tomorrow, on lead water samples, pesticide, petroleum, and inorganic water sample fees to cover the costs in those departments. And then private wells, we discovered in looking at all of the numbers, environmental health made us aware that this is a fee that they've always been charging, but it hasn't been included in your fee manual. So this is not a new fee, it's a cleanup to make sure it's a ratified fee, or I'll say legitimized fee, for private wells and water samples. And you won't hear anything else from me about additional or new fees. I do believe each of those are reasonable and necessary in order to continue to provide the services that we're providing. That concludes your revenues. On the expenditure side, you have the same pie chart, and you can see how these break down in accordance with your priorities. Education is the biggest piece of your pie. It's also your first priority, and we'll fund education at $67 million if you adopt this recommended budget. Public safety at $59 million, 20% of your budget. Those are your top two. Economic development is funded a little bit differently, so then we then jump down to human services at $52 million, general government at 52, debt service, and on down the line. So the numbers you see here for your overall expenditures total $288 million, which match your conservative revenues and cover all of your priorities in the order that you've set them. And we'll go into a little more detail about each of those as well. So let's talk for a second a little bit more about Pitt County Schools. Pitt County Schools this year is funded at $42.9. They requested $47 million, almost a 10% increase, about a 9-point-something% increase. And I'm recommending that we fund Pitt County Schools at $45,520,242. And this is after really considering their budget and talking with Dr. Linker. And you'll hear from him this week as well. And I'll tell you what we've done. We've kept Capital 1, 2, and 3 allocations for capital flat and where it is, and that's what they asked for. Their rent is just a number because they're in this building that's flat, and that stays where it is. But what that $45 million covers, the school requested it really in 3 batches, and it made sense to me this way, so it's not on your slide, so I'll explain it to you this way. They asked for about $1.4 million in fixed salary costs that they said were fixed expenses in order to keep the locally funded positions in line with the mandates that they have at the state level to raise the minimum salary level for their employees. Then they had a category at $1.9 million in new funds, or $1.9 million of facility fees, facilities and maintenance. And then they had about $700,000, which was for a recommended teacher supplement. You may recall this board discussed in prior years past kind of a stair-step tiered approach to continue to increase that teacher supplement. So what this $45 million covers, and what I talked to Dr. Linker about, and I believe he'll come to you this week and say that he's in agreement with this recommendation, is it covers all of those fixed costs that are unavoidable. It covers 100% of his requested supplement increase for teachers. And then it takes his repair money and it brings that back down to a total budget of about 6% more than last year, right? If we're talking about 4% growth in the base across the board, and we're talking about education as our #1 priority, then it probably ought to be more than 4%. But I don't know that we can balance a budget at close to 10%. And so the solution that we kind of developed, that Dr. Linker was agreeable to, was that we would bring down that repair money to a level that made the total budget about 6% more than it was last year. And it would fully fund teacher supplements, fully fund fixed costs, and then utilize as much repairs as he could make out of the remainder in money, which is over $500,000, allocated toward ongoing repairs. He acknowledged as well that the repair money we gave him last year hasn't been all spent yet and can carry over. And neither did the money that we gave the year before. So when we give the school repair money and they don't spend it, it falls back into their fund balance and they keep it. It doesn't come back to us, right? So as we're watching this, if you're not spending all the money we give every year and it's falling back to fund balance and your fund balance is growing, and then you're adding more to it in requests, what we decided to do is not do what I would like, which would be just a pay-as-you-go, right? Because we have to budget in advance. Let's budget more conservatively. And if you, and I don't think that's going to happen, if you run out of this year's money and the money you had set aside from last year and the year before, come back. And when sales tax continues to look good, I assured that this board would not be opposed, and I would recommend that if there was some project that needed to be funded, we would fund it. But I just wasn't a real fan of increasing our revenues to fully fund those repair expenses when there's still money. You can only, even with the best team that the Board of Education has, you can't spend all that money because you have to manage the projects. And you have to time them according to contractor availability. And so you will see that repair money is what shrunk to bring the school's total increase to 6%. I'm proud to give the schools an extra 6% over last year. I'm proud to fully fund fixed expenses, and I'd be proud to fully fund their requested teacher supplement for this year. But I think we are wise to keep that number where it is. The schools may, when they make their presentation, they're probably going to ask you for $1.9 million for those repair costs. And I'm not saying that those aren't legitimate requests. My recommended budget, though, shaved that number down, consistent with our focus on people. So this is what school funding looks like over the years, from 12-13 all the way up to 22-23. We are, with our numbers, standing behind our commitment to education. And this year we'll jump from $44.3 million to $46.9 million for Pitt County Schools. If I were a parent, I am a parent, I have children in the public schools, I did have children in the public schools, this would make me very happy. Talk about Pitt Community College. Their request was a little more modest than Pitt County Schools. They only asked for 2.85% more than they had last year. And it's not that they don't have additional needs, but we've been talking to Pitt Community College all year long, if you recall, and this board provided a commitment to a welding building, and we told them we'd talk about workforce technology as we go into the future, and we're strengthening our partnerships with our education providers. And so they came in at a very modest budget, and I did tell both of them I wanted to fund them both fully. And if they could submit a budget that allowed me to fully fund them, I would do it. So we agreed on the reductions on public schools, and we are able to fully fund Pitt Community College at their modest request, bringing their budget 2.5% higher than it was last year, with last year's being $6.3 million and this year's being $6.5 million to meet their needs. And this is what Pitt Community College funding looks like on a bar chart. We're continuing to put our money behind that priority, and they jumped from 4.7 million in 2012-13 all the way up last year at 6.4, this year to 6.5. So that's investing in one of the best community colleges I think we have in the state. EMS District Fund, let's talk about emergency services for a minute. You'll hear from them later this week as well. Their current tax rate is 5.95%. When I say we're not changing tax rates, I'm not looking to change any tax rates. When I say ad valorem is flat, so is EMS tax. And I'm recommending that stay flat at 5.95%, no change in your EMS tax. I believe we can keep that constant. It does provide an increase in the annual allocation to each nonprofit, in part because we do an incredible job of collecting and managing those funds. It adds a peak time unit in the Chicot area, which you'll see in your budget. This is not a year that I'm adding people to your budget, but you will see in a few slides 5 more people for the peak time unit in the Chicot area that's covered within the existing EMS tax. I have no problem expanding within existing revenues if our good work brought those revenues to the point where we can afford it. What we're not doing is raising the tax to match once. It continues the capital replacement plan that's already in place, and this budget was recommended by the EMS Oversight Committee. Fire district tax rates. It's this board's responsibility to approve the fire district taxes. On this screen, you will see the 20 departments, their current tax rates, their proposed rates, and those highlighted in green are those that are requesting an increase. Blackjack, Fountain, Staten House, and Winterville. And these are the budgets that our volunteers who provide this valuable community service to us day in and day out, sacrifice their time, show us their courage to keep our community safe. 4 of those departments tell us that they need an increase, and that's included within your recommended budget. Our affiliate and nonprofit sustaining agency requests. These are the recurring allocations year over year in our existing operating budget for those entities that are carrying out services that if they did not, the county would have to do it. That includes your libraries and your council on aging. And I'm asking that they all remain flat this year because this is not a growth year. That doesn't mean we won't have growth in the future. But until our economy becomes a little more certain, I'm asking all of our sustaining agencies to remain flat. Shepherd Memorial Library looks like it's a decrease, but it's not because we did some one-time fees. I had an interesting conversation in agenda review with Alex Albright about the difference between the original budget and the revised budget. So all year long, you do budget amendments, right? And when extra money comes into the budget, that adds into the operating budget. But I'm not comparing your revised budget to your new budget. I'm comparing your original budget. Because if one-time funds came in, we don't automatically assume that that rolls into the base. If you could do it based on last year's original, you can probably do it based on this year's original. And so that's one of those instances where Shepherd Memorial Library had a revised budget of $716 million because they had a one-time expenditure that wouldn't need to roll into their base. So at 667, we're holding them constant. And you'll see down that line that we have everybody essentially held constant in our affiliate agencies. Positions. Talk for a minute about, and I'm looking at my time, Mr. Chairman, talk for a minute about positions. The department's recommended that we add 59 and a half new positions to your budget this year. 59 and a half new positions to your budget. And none of them were frivolous. All of them were needed. So let me tell you my thinking, which may be different than years past on positions. And then, of course, you as a board will decide how you want to handle it. I'm recommending in this budget 13 of those 59. And here's why. For cooperative extension, we currently have a 3/4 time position for the community garden. And the funds for the community garden program have ended, and there's no other budget from which to draw from. It has been a tremendous asset in our community to have a community garden where it is and in other places. And I believe it makes sense to 100% fund that to be consistent with our mission and our service to our citizens. EMS, I'm requesting 5 positions go into the budget. They're all 100% covered by that EMS fund. That's no new dollars, it's already covered. Inspections has a 3/4 time position that if we made that a full-time position, it not only would enhance service in that department, it may retain an employee, and it's so little money that I think it's worth investing in. MIS, this one I struggled with. Information technology is seeking one full position that would be 100% county funded for a security officer. And in this world of increasing cyber events, I've heard the board talk about concerns with cybersecurity. If I didn't fund this position and something happened because we weren't on the ball, we would regret it. So I am recommending that we add one full-time position in our MIS department to address security. It will also, I believe, ultimately reduce our cyber liability insurance rates, because if we have a person dedicated to monitoring the security, to making us so tight that we are at the least possible risk for an attack or any sort of compromise of data, we may see some benefit on our insurance premium. And so I think it may pay dividends, but I think it's one of those positions that if you don't put it in, we might regret it later. And we can afford it. And then finally, I'm recommending 6 positions for social services. And the social services positions are great to put in because they're not totally county funded. They're federal funded, state funded, and then a small portion county funded. So those 6 positions are really the equivalent of a little over 1 position based on what our contribution to that position would be. You just get more bang for your buck based on the social services funding formula. And we've allocated those positions in our areas of greatest need, adult services and child welfare. And so I have no doubt in my mind the positions are needed, and we can afford them because of the funding formula. That's why it looks like 6. And that makes a total of 13 in your recommended budget. If you include all 13, your budget remains balanced. I also want to talk for a second about an opportunity for vacant position reclassification. I've done a lot of studying over the last few months and weeks over our vacant positions. And you may hear something different about vacant positions in future budgets going forward. For example, I may say if a position has been vacant for 12 months or longer, it needs to be eliminated as just a matter of kind of practice or policy. I don't think now is the right time to impose a rule like that because we've had COVID for the last 2 years. And I don't think we have a true snapshot of our vacancies. I also know we're in a push right now to fill vacant positions. We've done the job fair, we've done other things. Our focus is on getting us fully staffed. But I do know that there are positions that have been vacant for quite some time. And so in those departments who might have asked for positions that I didn't fund, that department head can do a real hard look at their vacant positions and reclassify one that's vacant to one that they now need, and it can be a net neutral cost. And that's what I'm really pressing our departments to do. So you may, for example, hear from the sheriff this week, and she may say, I have 2 grant-funded positions for my signature Sharp and Wear program, and the grants run out, and I need 2 new positions in my head count to fund these positions. Otherwise, I will sacrifice the quality of service that I have. I totally agree that she needs those 2 positions to remain in her signature program if she wants to continue to operate that signature program. But she has right now 38, 39 vacant positions. And on any given month, going back multiple years, there are about 15 vacant positions. So my suggestion is take 2 vacant positions you don't need, reclassify them to these positions, and keep your folks on board. Similarly, she has a position, and she'll talk about it in her presentation as well, it's escaping me right now. It was a specialized area that she would like additional support to cover. Same thing. The sheriff is separately elected. She runs her office the way she deems best. I'm not the one who's there to tell her how she should run her business or what title she should give her folks or where she should allocate her resources. What I am saying is that we have so many vacant positions in the county right now that have been vacant far longer than our current crisis and the pandemic, that there are opportunities for vacant position reclassifications, and I'll press every department to do that before I recommend to you that we increase our headcount. Remember, every one of those vacant positions is pulling money from this budget and is fully funded for a year, whether somebody's in that position or not. I don't want to manage a budget where folks maintain vacant positions and then have extra money that maybe they didn't really need, because I believe we should operate a lean government and a lean budget. So those other net from above that 13 up to that 59, if there are some that are necessary and department heads believe they need to have them, then I will ask them to look within their existing budgeted funds. I made a note for myself, I believe, on how many we have. It's, I think, 49 vacant positions in social services, I think 42 vacant positions in public health, I think 38 vacant positions in the sheriff's office, and that's a fluid number. It changes by the day. But that's about where we were at last count. There's room. There's room. Don't be fooled into thinking you have to increase your base budget and increase your head count to meet the needs of our citizens. Just don't think we have to.
So the money is there for those positions because the position was there when the budget was made. So we don't need extra money for those vacant positions.
That's my recommendation.
Okay.
Yes, yes. We fully fund 100% of all vacant positions, whether they're filled or not. The employee medical fund, we talked about this a little bit at the beginning. No employee participation fee or premium changes this year. No change in your dental and vision reimbursement. That remains as it is. No coverage changes. We're not backdooring anything either. We're not saying your premium stays the same, but your coverage goes down. You have the same coverage at the same cost. We have the new enhanced option for employee children for our single parents, or intact families who the spouse might have free coverage at their employer. It might make sense to save a couple $100 a month by splitting up how you cover your children. We're covering a $1.4 million increase in our self-funded plan. So typically that would be passed on somewhat to the users, but we're not going to do that this year as a loud and clear message that we value our employees and we understand the value of their take-home pay. So the county is balancing this budget, covering that $1.4 million shortfall in our self-insured health insurance fund with no impact to the employees. And there you can see the coverage tiers. If you were an employee and one child, it was $405. But if you had two children, you had to pay $710 a month for your family coverage. Now you can pay $490. That's a savings. And we maintain employee spouse coverage at $590 per month. You've heard a lot from me. You'll hear a little bit more. But just change the view and the voice. I'm going to have Brian come up and talk about our capital improvement projects.
Okay, Chair and Board, I'm going to jump in and kind of pick up where we left off back in January. I know that seems like a while ago, but we ended with our CIP, and you all blessed us to move it forward to this process. As Janice alluded to, as we go through the line items and we look at our conservative revenue approach, we try to make all of our capital work to the best of its ability. But ultimately, Janice laid out one of her goals was living within our means. And the projects that you have in front of you tonight are what we're recommending. So starting on the general government, we are going to continue our annual allocation for vehicles. These are the vehicles that we do across all of our departments. We did up this number a few years ago to $665,000. We're also going to continue our facilities maintenance. We try to patch up as best we can, primarily in this building, but across all of our county facilities. We are looking to continue to do the best that we can to make sure that our employees have the best facilities to work in. Our security improvements, we actually upped this number quite a bit. This is a combination of our traditional security improvements plus some work at the courthouse for $337,000. We are going to continue looking at our uptown study as we move people in and out of the courthouse. And different facilities in the uptown area of Greenville. We are going to continue to look to see what makes sense to move forward so we can maximize our space. And then finally, on general government, we are recommending a bucket truck for our buildings and grounds folks. As you all remember, throughout the spring here, before we hit daylight savings, we had quite a few issues with lighting. and we'd like to be able to tackle some of them on our own, so we are looking at a new truck to help our folks in buildings and grounds. From public safety standpoint, we just mentioned on the EMS fund slide, we are going to continue our program of looking at capital. And then we decided last year with the detention center just to set an amount of money for them to look at their facility needs, given the large amount of space that they have and their clientele. They have quite a few facility issues, and we have set that amount at $120 for them to best determine their needs at the detention center. On our environment and physical, this typically, I'm jumping ahead. On the economic development, this is our plan. As you all remember, about a year ago with the pipeline situation, we had a shortage of fuel, and we decided best that it was time for us to look at having some fuel storage on site. You're actually going to see two of these, but this is the first one that we are tying with engineering. It's $100,000. And then our second item here is we modernize our inspection process. This is the second payment of our software upgrade, so that we have much better software in place as we move forward with making improvements in inspections to get people in and out as fast as possible. Environmental protection, typically this is all solid waste, but this year, based on a recommendation from you all, we decided to include ongoing money for our soil and water folks to do their continuation of their creek and river snagging. We have been blessed with some really good grants, but we didn't want to wait around for those opportunities. We wanted to keep this as a fluid moving process. As you know, things with the environment change, and so we decided to start putting some money aside. So we have put $100,000 in place. We're always going to have some money set aside for asphalt replacement, asphalt repair at our transfer station and our convenience sites because of the sheer amount of volume that we've had. We were blessed to get some state money to help push this along a little further this fiscal year, but we do have the $100,000 in place. And then here's the second part of that fuel situation that we're looking at. So really we're going to have two specific fuel tanks to help us in case we do get no bind from a fuel standpoint, that we'll have some stuff ourselves. And then as usual with the amount of equipment that we use at solid waste, we're always going to have some vehicles that we are looking. There's really more heavy equipment than vehicles, so we have a rubber tire loader, we have a roll-off truck, tractor trailer replacement, and one of our yard jockeys that we're looking to replace at the transfer site. In total, it's about $4.7 million in what we consider to be part of our capital improvement program. And again, this was carried forward from your discussions back in January. So I'm going to turn it back over to Janice.
And I'll just finish it up here. Thank you, Brian. So in summary, the budget that I'm presenting to you, and you have further backup in your notebooks, has no increase. It fully funds 13 FTE positions. It values all of our employees, every single one of them. And it increases funding for your top priorities: education, public safety, and human services. Quick preview. Tomorrow you will hear from Human Services. You'll hear from Public Health, and you'll hear from Social Services. Public Health's budget, we're recommending at $13.7 million. It's a 3.3% increase over last year. If you see my asterisk and take out a one-time fund for a one-time payment that we did for $612,000 advanced for the Smile Safari, right? So don't let anyone make you think that the budget's going down by comparing it to the figures with the Smile Safari in there. If we're comparing apples to apples, it actually goes up 3.3%. Social Services, you'll see their budget go up 3.62%. And other human services, which is a conglomerate of different things. It includes veteran services, it includes different funds, goes up about 2.53%. Again, trying to stay as close to that sort of 4% growth as we can, and I think you'll see these numbers a little bit lower because they bring in so many funds from other sources. You'll also hear from Health some recommendations for fee changes within their septic unit. And so I'll let you know my thoughts on that. We have struggled with staffing in our septic unit, and it may make sense to adjust some of those fees. And I don't disagree that it would, to increase some of those fees. I just didn't feel like with the outcry that we've had from the community about our ability to carry out those services, that this was a time to adjust those fees. So you may hear from Public Health that they requested fee adjustments in the septic area. They are not included within my recommended budget. for that reason. That doesn't mean they won't ever be, but I want to get fully staffed. I want folks to be really pleased with the services they're getting from that division, and then we'll talk about the fees. On social services, you will hear that they will be asking for additional positions above those 6. And I'm not here to say that those positions wouldn't be needed, but I'd refer you back to kind of the conversation we just had about the opportunity for reclassification with 49 vacant positions right now. Education, you'll hear from Dr. Lanker at Pitt County Schools. And just remember, we're getting that up to 6%. I would have loved to fully fund it. But just remember that the place where we've shaved it is in a place where there's discretion. And I told him, please, if you run out on the repairs, come back to me, and we'll find a way to make it happen, because we're partners, right? We're not gonna leave anybody stuck. But I am thrilled, and I just put that asterisk there again, that we're fully funding fixed salary increases and fully funding the entire requested teacher supplement that they've asked for. I think that's great. Pitt Community College, you probably won't hear much about. They're being fully funded at 100%. And other educational expenses, that relates to debt service and other things like that, is increasing at 5.65%. So you'll see those education expenditures above our normal growth of 4%. And then you'll hear from public safety. And let me just mention this to you. I think you will hear from the sheriff that she'll be requesting additional positions. Again, think back about reclassification. And she has other needs and projects that she would like to do. And if we had all the money in the world, I would love to do all of them. But she's actually, in this recommended budget, over all of her funds, receiving a 7.89% increase. That's the highest increase of any other fund in the budget. Why? Driven in large part because of an increased cost in jail medical services. The sheriff will now have the provider of her choice in jail medical, and we have covered that cost within a balanced budget. 4%, she's very people heavy. So a 4% across the board increase, in addition to 1.2 or 2.4 on top of your salary, in addition to the sheriff's certification pay and other programs that she has, drives that number up a little higher than the rest of the departments, and it puts her at 7.89%. I know she will think that's not enough, and it's fine for her to think that and present it to you, and you will have a morning to hear from her on what she needs. I just want you to be aware, her budget is going from $36 million to $39 million, 7.89%. That's a significant almost $40 million to carry out law enforcement in Pitt County government. How proud can we be of our investment in public safety? So I feel really good about this budget. EMS fund is increasing, but it's covered within itself at 11%, and other public safety includes all of the other public safety entities, your 911, your other funds, and they're actually increasing at 17.99%, but covered within their revenues that they generate or existing revenues. So that's how you'll see those numbers. Total public safety is increasing at 10.17%. It's a huge increase. It's an investment I think we can be proud of. Quick recap. We're valuing our employees this year, and this is the best way that I know how to do it while living within our means. We've got merit adjustment, 4% market adjustment, the highest that we've ever had in our recorded history of market adjustment. And folks may say, hey, maybe one year didn't we do a 4%? We split it out and we gave it to them halfway through the year. So your effective cost of living adjustment really wasn't 4%, because when you give it at January, it's really only half of that. This is a July 1 increase. Reinstatement of longevity, retirement contribution increase, no health insurance premiums, and additional health insurance coverage options. Your remaining calendar, May 3rd to the 5th, we'll have the workshops. They were scheduled for the next 2 weeks. You won't need them. Please free up your calendars. I think it will be important for you to hear from your presenters Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I know that you are all very busy and conscious of your time. I've asked folks to keep their presentations as short as they can be. I know I'm not very good at that, but I'm doing my best. So you should be done well before our noon finish time. I don't think we'll need workshops that Friday or the following week unless the board so desires to discuss further. June 7th will be your public hearing on the budget for citizen input. You can adopt the budget that evening if you're satisfied with it, or you can wait until June 20th, which is your last opportunity to adopt the budget, so you have a balanced budget in place before July 1. My last slide is just to say thank you to you all for listening. to the Tax Administration Office for helping us with these conservative revenue projections, for every single department head and their staff who contributed to the development of this budget. It was truly a team effort. For our information technology team, everything is in the computer, right? So I have all of my handwritten notes, but everything is digital and computerized, and we couldn't do this without our IT team. And then last but certainly not least, our county finance team. You've got Brian Barnett, Denise Urban, and Kelly Dixon, who have worked so many hours to make sure this budget has every I dotted and T crossed in what's being recommended to you, down to every final piece of math at the end. And so we will continue to work. We'll listen. We'll make adjustments as this board directs us to over the next few days and over the next month. And so that when we come back to a public hearing in June, it's a budget that becomes yours, that you are presenting to the public and that you're comfortable with. And we'll check this off our list for this year. Move on to the next project.
Thank you very much. That was outstanding.
Okay.
If we could now move on to public hearings. Mr. Rhodes.
You've got to have at least one question for Janice while we're in transition here, so,
I don't have a question, but thank you so much for this. This is phenomenal. It's the first time I've ever seen this prior to budget time, and I think it gives us all a much better picture about what our job is ahead of us. And I realize that you have touched base with every person in this county that has anything to do with this, and I know they feel a part of that, which they should, so thank you.
thank you, Mrs. Ward.
Yes, sir, did I do
And
it? Is that enough time?
Good afternoon, thank you for that segue, and, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we have one rezoning request tonight. This again is in the Southwest Bypass Corridor Plan, and we'll talk about the details of that. It's at Heinz Crossroads. Very small, only about 1/3 of an acre. This is owned by Mr. Brinkley Moore, and it's right at the intersection there at Nash Joyner Road and US 13. So here's your map showing you it's just a little bit further west, past the Southwest Bypass on US 13, right at the intersection with Nash Joyner Road. Very small area. This is just showing you may recall when we went west of the bypass, we pretty much designated that area for agricultural purposes. And so you'll see that shown here in green throughout that area. There are some existing uses already in place, some residential uses shown in gold, and also there are some sporadic, I'll say somewhat randomly placed commercial there that were pre-existed. And that's, you can see on the site here that a portion, if I can get my mouse together, this is the area that kind of bisects. That's that 1/3 of an acre that I mentioned earlier that is being tagged onto an existing commercial area. So with that, Southwest Bypass Plan, all agriculture just west of the corridor itself. And this shows exactly what the current zoning is. So we did designate those areas that had some of the commercial. Those are also designated as such on our zoning map. This particular one is being expanded to the north, and that's where that 1/3 of an acre is sited. There's some construction on this site. There is a structure involved that is non-compliant if this does not pass. So the general commercial district, as per our zoning ordinance, is to accommodate a number of different uses that are commercially oriented, everything from retail to multifamily. This is a little bit odd, and we'll take you through that as to why the planning staff agrees that this is consistent with the Southwest Bypass, putting the bypass plan, putting commercial in an agricultural area. The main thing here, this particular property is currently used as commercial. It's not used as agriculture. No indication that it would be or could be, because it's basically surrounded by some other types of uses. So that plays also into whether it's reasonable and consistent. We think it is reasonable for this expansion, and therefore recommending an approval for that tonight. Planning Board also has reviewed this at their meeting last month and has recommended approval for this request. And those are your two motions tonight. Again, consistency with the land use plan and reasonable and in the public's interest. And also the second motion is to approve that rezoning request. So we're ready for public comment.
You can, if you'll open the public hearing, I don't believe I have anyone signed up to speak.
Hearing is now open. Seeing no one is here to sign or to speak, it is now closed. This time entertain such a motion.
What structure is on that property?
It's a new well, actually, there's a couple of structures. There was an existing structure that has a small business in it, and this is a new structure that is going to have some storage as well as some commercial operations.
You said there was one already on the property?
There's one already, a smaller one and a large
A
one
storage
that's
unit?
under construction.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion that we adopt both motions, motion 1 and 2.
Second. It's been moved and properly second. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was gonna ask him a question so I could get this up, but he took care of it for me. Good evening.
Amy.
I'm gonna talk a little bit about our program and some things that I would like to recommend so we can do a little bit better job with our litter and, illegal dumping problems we have. So we have a mission statement at Solid Waste, and it's to provide that everyone in the community with waste disposal capacity, waste collection service, and waste reduction activities. We want to increase our efficiency at a cost-effective solid waste program. We strive to meet established waste reduction goals, and we want to decrease improper waste disposal, and we want to protect the public health and our environment. So, real quickly, you know, we operate a transfer station off Allen Road. We accept commercial waste there, industrial waste, and residential waste, and C&D waste. There is a misconception, or there's some people that don't understand that they can bring their residential waste to the transfer station and we do not charge them for that. I hear it all the time when I'm out at a site. You know, oh, I thought I was gonna have to pay for it. So any residential waste, like your kitchen garbage, furniture, boxes, anything that's not construction debris, we take at the convenience sites as well as the transfer station at no charge. That's part of the household fee that we charge each resident. Just here is a picture of our transfer station with a load of trash. Just wanted to let you know, on average, we ship out about 20 to 25 of these trailers a day on any given day. And one of my pet peeves too is to make sure when these trailers leave that they're covered correctly. And if they're not, I get on the waste hauler, the private waste hauler that hauls them, because obviously we don't want to be the cause of littering. Our convenience sites, we have 14 of them around the county. They're located, as you can see, throughout the county. Those are the addresses. Back in 2012, we did a survey of the sites, and we also asked for people's addresses so we could determine how far away they were. The ones that provided that, we came up with that everybody was within 2.8 to 3 miles from a site. So our sites are pretty well convenient for everybody. And again, we don't charge anything for any of the material that we accept at the sites. We don't take C&D waste at the sites, but we do take, of course, household garbage, yard waste, bulky items, white goods, which are wash machines, dryers, and hot water and those type appliances, electronics and TVs, cardboard commingled, and glass bottles and jars. And our hours of operation, as you can see, we're open in the summertime 75 hours a week. And then we drop back in the wintertime and close at 6 p.m. There are only 3 days a year that we're closed. Easter, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. We're open every day besides those 3 days. Those 3 days are the 3 days I like because I can really cut my phone off and not worry about it. I've been, and I probably have said this before in a meeting, but I've got a close to 30 years experience in the solid waste field and lived in 3 different states and all over North Carolina. Pitt County has the easiest and cheapest way to get rid of their garbage, plain and simple. I think so, and I would argue with anybody about that. Real quickly, just want to let you know that we haul our own material from the sites, and as you can see from this graph, the red bar shows the tonnage that is collected, and then the hauls that we haul the material. These hauls exclude any yard waste that we haul to E.R. Lewis. Has a couple of landfills that we use. For instance, there's one out near Conley that we use at our county home site. We haul our yard waste there because it's quick turnaround time. We can haul yard waste. We can probably haul about 15 to 20 containers a week of just yard waste out of that site. And this also doesn't include any of the recyclables that we haul to ECVC. So, illegal dumping, it is a problem. We do try to investigate our illegal dumping as much as we can. These 2 pictures are interesting because the picture with the tire and the cooler, this material could be taken to any one of our convenience sites, or it could have been taken to the landfill at no charge. Now, we don't take tires at the convenience site, but we do take them at the transfer station. That material could have been dumped for no charge. The picture with the toilets and sinks and that material, we would have charged for that material, but it probably would have been less than, say, $25, somewhere around there. We do charge per ton, but we don't have a minimum fee, and we weigh the trucks in, weigh them out, whatever you leave. The other day, I was working up there, and I think the amount was 45 cents that we charged the customer for whatever he dropped off. So, I mean, a toilet I think costs you less than $1, or maybe right around $1. So it's not going to break the bank. So here's just some more pictures. Again, these materials could have been taken free of charge at the convenience sites or at the transfer station. As you see, if you go and investigate this material, sometimes you can find a name in it and sometimes you can't. A lot of times, if you do find a name in it, the people may have moved out and dumped their load, and it's hard to find them. But we do try, and we have been successful getting people to clean up, and once we find them, find where they live. This is another problem we've got, and this is what we call unintentional littering. And it's something, and Mr. Sutton talked about it, and there is a problem with it. And it's litter coming off trucks, not properly secured. Yes, commercial waste haulers are a problem with it, and I'm constantly calling the waste haulers if I see them coming to the landfill and there's trash on top of the truck. I called the city the other day because they had one. It was reported to me. The only thing is, it was reported to me like a day and a half later, and I said, please let me know immediately. But I did call the city and talk to them as well. And I did receive a phone call from the city Public Works Director on Friday. He knew I was making this presentation, and he seemed concerned, and he wants to help. He wants to be a player in this, and that's one of my recommendations here in just a minute. But this unintentional littering can happen if someone has a pickup truck and they take their material to wherever, to the transfer station or to the sites. They may have had it covered when they came, but yet there's a few bottles or some other trash in the bed of their truck. That stuff can fly out. So just having stuff in your bed, it can cause litter as well. I would like to introduce Officer Nick Whaley. He is my new environmental officer. He's been with us, Nick, July? August. He does a wonderful job. He does patrol and inspect all the sites and patrols and investigates illegal dumping. We're working on one that was given to us, and we're trying to find out if, we haven't been able to find any names, but we're going to approach the property owner and ask them to put up a gate because it's easy to access back there, and people will, they'll just go in any path and dump material. But he also, we are doing some other things at the transfer station. One, we had a sign up there, and now we've taken it down, and I've got a new sign, nice new one coming, should be put up here in the next, hopefully this week. Also, we have, we developed a new brochure, and you'll pass those around. What our plans are is to be at the transfer station. Well, we do give out brochures and we do talk to them. The scale house ladies do that. But we're going to ramp up that, and both myself and Nick be at the transfer station yes, we probably need to step up our findings, but we also need to educate and convince these folks that that without securing their loads properly, it causes litter. We do have our solid waste ordinance. Our solid waste ordinance does need to be updated, and that's one of the things I'm working on. But this section of the solid waste ordinance does talk about loads covered and secured, and what we can do, and the authority of fining someone that comes in with their load not secured or covered properly. We do have fines in our solid waste ordinance. These are our fines we have in the past fined, and still do fine some folks if they're illegal dumping, if we catch them illegal dumping something, or uncovered loads, or that thing. We also work with the state solid waste section too. There was a, and Nick, this was one of his, he helped with the state get this cleaned up. There was, it was out on County Home Road past the site. The gentleman was using his property, dumping material, yard waste, and he started dumping C&D material, and he didn't have a permit to do that. And we talked to him. Didn't seem like he wanted to clean it up, so we talked to the state, and the state told us what to tell him, and he did get it cleaned up, and I do believe that there's no material there now to this day. Recommendations. This is my recommendations, what I'd like for us to do moving forward. I'd like to create an internal solid waste committee and make recommendations addressing litter. And the committee consists of bringing private haulers such as GFL, the city, the county. DOT needs to be involved. Ask the Sheriff's Department to be involved as well. we want to help coordinate litter pickup programs with community service. We started this when Officer Millie was here, before Officer Whaley got here, and then of course COVID came. He was working with community service to see if we could get community service people and we could get a road and go and pick that road up or something like that. Want to work with NCDOT on their litter and adopt the highway programs and continue to enforce our solid waste ordinance, and with people not covering their loads and securing their loads property. Obviously, our solid waste ordinance needs to be updated as well. And one thing we've done in the past is we've sponsored tarp giveaways. Keep North Carolina Beautiful used to provide tarps, the blue tarps, and we would spend a Saturday out at a site and give tarps away. They're not going to do it. I'm looking at pricing the tarps myself. Last year or 2 years ago, we did have a private person provide us tarps. So we're going to try that method too. He gave us about 100 tarps. And so that's one thing we'd like to get back going, is our tarp giveaway program. And then do a public information media campaign and get it out and try to get people to do the right thing. And that's all I have. I'll be glad to answer any questions. Yeah, that's, we thought about or approached the schools to get the high schools to see if they could get volunteers, and they can get volunteer hours, is approach the schools. Officer Whaley did tell me that the other day. We did talk about that. That's his idea.
Mr. Chairman, if there's, after your questions, if there's consensus on the recommendations, we'll move forward with those, but please go ahead.
I just wondering, so when someone at solid waste supervisor, say, determines that a load is not covered, who writes the fine?
Well,
So you would write the fine?
I would write one of them, but I think we're talking about.
we talked about having the scale house have the book there and that them fill it out.
So part of what you're proposing is that be looked at much more closely.
Yes.
And I think that's been one of the
Yes.
concerns of Mr. Sutton, is that we were not necessarily enforcing it. Thank you. And I appreciate your work too, and thank you for your report and all that you're doing. I should have said
Thank
something. Thank you.
What would how would the city be involved in it? You did mention that he called you. So
Well,
what are they proposing?
I mean, they're involved. Their trucks have been known, just as well as probably our trucks have been known to drop something on the road. So just get them to help us with that. Now, the city does do they pick up Allen Road. They pay a private contractor to pick up Allen Road like twice a month. So just work with them on their issues. Just bring them, because they're part of the issues, and help us be part of.
So they're gonna monitor better. You
We'd
think?
like for them to, yes.
Yes.
And if I could add to that as well, too, I've had a couple of conversations, one is recently today and one I think last week, with Ann Wall, the city manager, and she is really excited about this campaign for us as well. There isn't anybody who isn't in favor of reducing the litter that's on the side of our roads, and she said too to me, and offered, that if you're putting together a committee to study this, please include our public works, we want to help. And so I believe that our continued partnership with the city of Greenville will only enhance our ability to make a significant impact in this area. So I was really pleased with her reception, as has been typical of late.
Mr. Demery, I don't have a question, I just have one comment. Thank you for your presentation. I know that there's been several areas of concern for y'all to monitor, and recently I got a message from someone that there's an area on Bill Jones Road that's a problem. That may already be an area that's on your radar, but I just wanted to throw that out there. They said people are throwing out tires and mattresses and all kinds of stuff, so.
That's right down there near the, opposite of the warehouse
Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you both.
And we do have, some cameras that we periodically put out. So, I mean, we're trying to do other things to
Mr.
police
Chairman.
it.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to make a motion that we move forward with this.
So
Second.
need a show of consensus or an actual vote?
A motion is fine. If you got a motion
It's
and
been
second.
moved and properly second. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rhodes?
Well, as you heard from us last month, we're right in the throes of updating our land use plan, and this is both with staff as well as our planning board serving as the steering committee. And so tonight, we wanted to give you an idea of the opportunities that people will have. The public is a major contributor to our land use plan updates, so we're taking it face to face. We're glad with the timing that we've got right now that we can get back out in front of people. We've got 4 public information sessions that will be available. We're going all around the county, starting Thursday, May 19th at D.H. Conley, then Wednesday, June 1st, Aden Grifton, Thursday, June 2nd at Farmville Central, and then Thursday, June 9th at North Pitt. All of these sessions, everyone will get the same opportunities, same format. It runs from 5 to 7. We'll give a brief presentation at about 6 o'clock, but it'll be an opportunity for people to informally come in, look at maps, talk with staff, talk with our consultants, and provide all the input that they would like. That's the old school approach, and we'll talk about the new school approach in a minute. So we've already started some input sessions. Last week, we had about 30 stakeholders from all around the community to come in, utility providers, people from the schools, people from the business community, municipalities, all came in, really were able to sit down around a table and provide a whole lot of information for us. It was intense. So we've started pulling together things already. But again, these other sessions that are coming up over the next month or so will give the public an opportunity to also come in and let us know about what they'd like to see in their particular area of our community.
And can you, if you're not able to go to the one in your community, can you go to one of the others?
Yes, ma'am. You
Okay.
can go to all 4 if you so
Okay.
desire. So,
Hope
yes,
nobody does
please.
that.
And again, another campaign, Mr. Demery talked about involving our public information office. They'll be involved in getting the advertisements out for this. The other thing is we have a website already devoted to it. There's a survey. We recommend that people, the new school approach, go online, provide this input online, or you can reach out to us. There's a lot of other information right on the webpage that will provide a good kickstart to this process and give more information about what is being requested at this point. So come see us in face-to-face or come online and provide all the input you'd like. So with that, Mr. Chairman, that's our presentation for our land use plan. Envision Pitt County 2045.
James, I want to talk about the meetings that you have set up. I know you talked about the old school, new school approach, but looking back at the sessions for the OP funding, which we went out and we still didn't get participation that we would like to have gotten on that. So it's on the website and all that. What about newspaper, the Daily Drum, Austin Radio, and contacting the municipalities to see if they can push something out locally?
We actually started that last week too, especially with the municipalities and in making sure that our planning jurisdiction meshes well with theirs. So a lot of those municipalities have already been represented at our stakeholder meetings. So we're already doing that outreach with them.
But to get the public, the average public.
So
involved.
yes, that's where we're using the skills and resources of our Public Information Office. They're helping us develop a media campaign. That's something new for us, where we'll actually be more structured about getting the word out, whether it's to the radio, whether it's to the print media. That's a new portion for us, and that's in the works right now. But
Facebook?
Sure. If you want it on Facebook, we have folks that can do that. It won't be me.
Me. But you know, we just have to find, you know, as many ways that we can, you know, reach the public, and we just have to keep working at it.
And Ms. Jones has a really good plan already laid out for us. She shared that with us at the end of last week about the different ways of reaching certain demographics in our community. That's a
And the
far
churches,
step than where we were in previous campaigns. So she's up next, and I'm sure she can provide you a lot better detail on that.
Okay.
Thank you, James.
All right.
Mr. Jones?
Wanted to go over the, Keep It Green PSA campaign results with you tonight. As a reminder, our target audience was homeowners, property owners, landscapers, residents with an interest in home and gardening and landscaping,
Excuse me, Ms. Jones.
and yard and patio.
Could you talk into the mic?
How about that?
That's better.
All right, so that was our target audience. In this campaign, it was very well received. Impressions delivered were over 27,000. Impressions are when the advertisement renders on a user's screen. Our click-through rate was 30%. Pitt County doubled the average, as the normal is between 12 and 16. Ad interactions were 1.86. This is where users hover over the ad, but they don't necessarily click on it. But that's an indicator that the ad was eye-catching and engaging. For the Daily Reflector, the video pre-roll delivered over 14,000 impressions. The completion rate was 72%. The normal range for Adams Publishing Group was 50%, and the click-through rate was 58%. Typically, video completion rate is in the 50% range because of low attention spans, because you're getting ready to watch something else. This is what they sneak in for you to watch. So we were very pleased to see that. And this is our results from WNCT. The video pre-roll was over 36,000. The click-through rate was 20%. On connected TV, that's your Xbox, Roku, Amazon Fire, was 52,000, and the completion rate for that was 87%. The broadcast data is still in the works. This campaign for them ran until April 26. But with a total of 35 spots, as of April 10th, we had reached 296,000 households. Those are the number of eyeballs that we got for this. And QR codes is something new for us, and we got a whopping 26. While I'm up here, I wanted to tell you about the Pesticide Collection Day. You can see we had over 22,000 pounds, over 1,500 containers. But it's important that this was an all-time record high for all of North Carolina counties. since the program began in 1980, and the previous high level was 9,000 pounds. And we did some social media advertisement as well as a press release, and that's all we did to get this. They also wanted me to let you know that some of the pesticides were able to be repurposed for local farm use, so that was nice.
Oh, good.
And that's it.
Thank you very much.
Have any questions?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I just want to reiterate that this was one of the most successful media campaigns we've done, and I was so thrilled and want to thank Dawn and her team for making this happen. I think this is the start of many more, and we've talked about continuing to do this each spring. St. Patrick's Day was when we rolled it out to say keep it green, and it's all done. We can continue to do it going forward.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Harden.
Good evening,
Good
Mr.
evening.
Chair and board members. As the manager announced several times during your board meetings, we decided to embark on sponsoring a job fair for county departments and for our positions. We've attended many job fairs that were sponsored by someone else, so this time we embarked on our own. So we didn't have to compete with others. You know, they were all here looking for jobs for Pitt County government. So the job fair was held on April 21st at the Mark W. Owens Auditorium at the Agricultural Center. We had 123 attendees, which we thought was pretty good for one employer. When the attendees arrived, they were given information about the current jobs that we were advertising at that time. And then they were given information about upcoming jobs, jobs we knew were becoming vacant pretty soon. So they were given that information as well. Attendees who came were interested in both full-time and part-time positions. So we had quite a few who wanted both or were looking for one or the other. They were provided a list of the county departments that were present and encouraged to visit each table, even if that department didn't have a position that was vacant at that time. And our goal in that was to have them meet the departments, find out what those departments do, in case they were interested in working for them. And not only that, we wanted them to get familiar with county government and realize the services that we provide and meet some of the employees who provide those services. They were given information on how to complete an application, how to apply for vacant positions, and we had some attendees who actually completed applications on site and turned them in while they were there, which was great. After the job fair, we received lots of phone calls from some who attended the job fair, some who didn't make it, who wish they had, with questions the next day on what jobs were becoming available, how can they apply, how could they get online, and just had some favorable comments about the fair that we had. As far as our marketing was concerned, we have to thank the Office of Public Information. They covered the marketing through press releases, through the county's website. They had it on the Staying Connected page, and they actually helped us get the signage that you may have seen out on 264. We had a huge sign at the corner. They provided copies of the flyers and social media posts to Economic Development to share with their workforce development group, so that was very helpful as well. Departments shared information themselves with some of their community contacts, and we found out that county employees were actually working with us as well and putting it on their social media accounts. You know, so we found out from some of them that they had been actually inviting people through Facebook. So go Facebook, go employees. And I've got a few pictures to show you, and just to say that I had a wonderful person in my office, Melissa Marlin, who did the coordination for this fair. So she coordinated with the marketing, she coordinated with PIO, and she coordinated with our department heads, who were absolutely wonderful. So we've got a few pictures we're going to show you, and I'm sorry they're small. We did them the best we could, and we had to take them at a time when we trying to protect the privacy of the people who were attending. So we took the photos at a time when they were not in the room. So we have someone from the sheriff's office. That large group is public health. I think they brought someone from each discipline, from the nursing staff, from environmental health, so that they could talk about their own divisions and explain that to the people who were attending. That's tax at the front, and in the background you have MIS and Pitt Area Transit. To your right you have social services staff who were there in attendance. We have planning, who was there representing planning and soil and water. We have emergency management. who was representing 911 and the paramedics and the whole emergency management program. Animal services, and in the background again, you see that same group, tax. Pitt Area Transit, Register of Deeds is also in the background. So we had, and then we have engineering and inspections, and I have to apologize to those departments whose photos didn't get in this group. Like I said, we were trying to get photos at times when people were not in the room. Potential applicants were not in the room. But we had lots of others there. Buildings and Grounds was there, Solid Waste was there and representing. Buildings and Grounds had some interesting tools on their table that people who work in that discipline were familiar with. So we thought we had a great turnout. At the end of the day, you know, we, of course, shared our vision statement. At the end of the day, we had several goals that we wanted to accomplish. One, hopefully to get people to apply for jobs with Pitt County government. Two, to get people familiar with Pitt County. Get to know some of our employees and the people who provide these services, and just get them interested in county government and say, hey, we're over here, come work with us. And then the third thing was provide information to potential employees for the future, and gave them information, provided information on what course of study they might want to consider if they're ever interested in working with Pitt County government. So we gave them a flyer with that type of information on it as well, so that they could prepare themselves to come and work for Pitt County government. But we thought it was a great day. We were really pleased with the turnout that we received, and we thank you for allowing us to do it. And we've had some wanting to know when we're going to do it again.
Okay.
I wish I could stand here and tell you that we filled all the positions, but I think the manager's already covered that, and we didn't. But we were pleased with what we did get.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you're going to do it again.
We said we had some ask if we were going to do it again.
Oh, well, I hope you do. I hope you will.
We would love to do it again, not because we have to, but because we think it's a great thing to do.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
to
what
keep
I'm talking
people
about.
familiar with county government. But I do want to put, you know, our website out there for people who are still interested, or who maybe didn't get to the job fair, so they can visit our website, see what we have available. The sheriff's office right now, I think, is doing open recruitment for law enforcement and detention positions, so make sure you check their website while you're out there. And our job line number that people can just call, and we keep a running list on that job line and we update it each Thursday. They can listen to the job line and see what we're actually advertising that particular week. So thank you once again for allowing us to do this.
Thank you very much. Madam Manager.
Yes, I have a short manager's report for you this evening. Your next meeting dates, May 3rd through 5th, will be your special budget workshops. June 6th at 6 p.m. Here in this room. June 7th, your public hearing on the budget, and June 20th is your meeting following that. Wanted to provide a brief update. I had mentioned to the board for item B on Sheriff's Office patrol space. As you know, we were, due to the Ficklin project, which we're excited about within the city limits of Greenville, we have to vacate the 9th Street office where Sheriff's Patrol currently is housed. And that has been, Tim Corley is here with us this evening, that has been a really difficult task. I was hoping this evening we would have had a decision made and space identified, but we are not there yet. So I'm just giving you an update. We will have a decision soon because we only had 60 days notice from about 30 days ago in looking at space, but we have been working cooperatively with the sheriff's office. We've looked at multiple spaces. We've worked with multiple property owners and real estate professionals to show us a variety of different options, including some space that had formerly been occupied by Vacant, some space that may be owned by Greenville Utilities, some space along Elm Street that was used beside a church, and different options. But we have not yet landed on one at the right price to meet the sheriff's needs. And so we'll continue to work on that and update you as that progresses.
I had several calls on that. I don't know how it got out in reference to the location at a church, and I told them I had no idea of any consideration about a church, a sheriff office being there. So, and personally, how it was presented to me, it was it didn't sound great as far as the community and the sheriff's office and the church kind of situation being involved. So I told them that I'm sure that we will think very seriously about having a office located at a church or above a church. But I understand I have talked to Brian about that, and he said that it was just a consideration, but not a major consideration. So that's the concern that I was.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. So Tim and I have viewed all sorts of space, really driven by the configuration of the space, the square footage, and the price. What makes this difficult is the sheriff is paying, it's a number between $2,500 and $3,000 a month now for that 9th Street space, which is a great deal on that space. She has other space. It's not an outrageous deal. She has other space that she pays $2,500 a month on for rent. What we're finding in the market now is that a lot of the private commercial space is running between $6,000 and $10,000 or more per month. We looked at some space that would have been ideal. It was over $20,000 per month for that lease space. I've just given you a recommended budget that incorporates lease rent in the neighborhood of what she's currently paying. So we did explore a church option because it was the right square footage and the right space configuration. The sheriff, we've included the sheriff in all of our tours, and we've had our listening ears on, and she expressed to us as well great concerns about that space. And so we recognize those and appreciate those concerns, and will absolutely take those into consideration when we make a decision on where to house her. But it's a matter of balancing the appropriate space with the available funds. So thank you for sharing that. And I do feel like the sheriff, we've had good open communication about all the places we've looked at. She's joined us to look at all of them, and we're continuing to find the right spot at the right price. So, but it has been a difficult task. Thank you for sharing that, though. 2 quick things. I wanted to let you know that today was a deadline, so we went ahead and applied for a rural transformation grant through economic development. The town of Ayden has asked for our assistance in securing some land for a corporate park. And in meeting with them, we brainstormed on funding sources and options. And one funding option that would cover the acquisition of that land is a rural transformation grant that Kelly Andrews identified. The deadline on that grant was very quick. The turnaround time was due today. And so I wanted to let you know there are no county match or no county funds associated with that grant, which is up to $750,000. And so I gave her the green light to go ahead and apply and told her I would let the board know that we did that. Similarly, the Register of, this is not, this would be your last item D, the Register of Deeds also had an opportunity to apply for a $2,000 grant. She had in her existing budget $2,000 for records preservation. She had not yet spent that money. And then the state came forward with a grant opportunity where if you matched $2,000, you could get another $2,000. And so using the existing budgeted funds in her revenue, she has gone ahead and applied for that grant to match and double that money for records preservation, an ongoing project within her office. And so I wanted to let the board know that we did that as well. I've discovered that where there are deadlines on grants, if we wait for the board's meeting, we may be losing opportunities. And so I've taken some level of discretion where it's something we've done before, there's no county funds attached to it, and there would be no obligation on the county to go ahead and give folks the green light to apply for those and then report them back to you. If there was a county match or it was anything unusual, we will always come to you first. That's all I have.
Thank you. This time, entertain a motion.
I so move that
Items
we
for consent.
accept the items for consent.
Second.
Motion passes. Mr. Barnett.
Good evening again. First item I have for you tonight is, you may remember back in 2019, we started a process of looking at our federal inmate reimbursement within the detention center and setting some funds aside into a capital reserve. You all passed a resolution that when we completed our annual audit, that we would look at that money to move to the sheriff for capital uses that were also approved during your CIP process. We moved a pot of money the first year in 2019, but we have not moved money since. So we have completed 2 audits since 2020 and 2021. Based on the audit findings, when we look at that reimbursement, we look at what we budgeted versus what we actually collected, and that additional money is available to move into the capital reserve. So the budget amendment tonight for the Sheriff's Capital Reserve is actually a 2-step process. The first step is to take those 2 years, the 2020 and the 2021, totaling $219,739 in 20 and $1,052,510 in 21, and moving those funds from our fund balance over to the sheriff's capital reserve. This is a process that you all have to approve, totaling $1.3 million. And this is, again, this may be pitched to you as revenue, but it's truly a reimbursement of what our costs are at the detention center to house those federal inmates. I support setting up this reserve back in 2019, and I think this is the proper step. The second step is just as soon as we move it, we want to move it back. According to our auditors, we cannot spend money out of the reserve, so we actually have to move it back into the sheriff's budget to actually spend. And what we're recommending as a need within the sheriff's office that we've identified through the budget process to use, and we wanted to match one of our own numbers of $650,000. That's our old vehicle number. We would like to use part of this reserve money to go ahead and get our name on the list for vehicles within the sheriff's office. We could start the process tomorrow, but it probably will be a few months before we can actually get vehicles in hand if we go ahead and use this money. So the first step is to move the identified funding from fund balance to the reserve, totaling $1.3 million, and then to move $650,000 back to the sheriff's budget in order to start the process of buying vehicles.
If it can be done as one motion?
Yes.
Okay, motion to take Mr. Barnett's both of his recommendations and move forward with that.
Second.
Commissioner Nunley?
Yeah, and Mr. Barnett, and would it be possible to recommend that the 650 allocation, and of course, if this is in line with Commissioner White's motion, to tailor that to patrol vehicles to address needs in that department?
So normally we don't direct departments on how to, we recommend that they get the most bang for their buck on vehicles, but obviously with this reserve being set up under your authority, I don't see why you couldn't unless the attorney tells me there's a reason why you can't.
No, and if I could just add to that, when I advised the sheriff, I've had multiple conversations with the sheriff about her need for vehicles. And we thought this was the most efficient way to start to chip away at that. And in my conversations with her, I did say that these would be for working vehicles, patrol vehicles or detention transport vehicles. These would not be for, these would not be for higher level employee transport vehicles. They would be true working vehicles.
Madam, would it be appropriate to put that in the motion?
You certainly may.
Okay, we can amend the motion to add what Commissioner Nunley's comment.
It's been moved and properly second. Motion passes.
So you have me again. The next two items kind of go hand in hand. You have on your agenda, this is for the sheriff's office, and I'm speaking on behalf of Sheriff Dance. As part of the ARP funding process, we've identified, or you all identified back in our February workshop, an opportunity to tackle a major issue within the sheriff's office. I'm sure many of you are aware of, the sheriff's office is on the Viper radio system, and that particular system is starting to be phased out by Motorola. They came to us during the CIP process and identified roughly around $1.8 million to buy and upgrade their system to something that will be supported by Motorola and will be more compatible as we move forward in the future. They've had an opportunity to really get this process started, and they would like for you all to bless them the opportunity to move this along. We are still in the process of working through all of our ARP policies and procedures. Myself and the attorney have been going back and forth on a litany of stuff from the School of Government, and I don't think this will affect that. I think this will ultimately fall within those policies once we're said and done. But again, with supply chain issues, I think the sheriff's office would like to go ahead and get the ball rolling on this particular purchase.
Motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second.
And then finally, I saved the best for last. I'm just saying that because they're in the room tonight. But our folks in emergency management is also part of your ARP process. You identified roughly around $1 million for them to go ahead and to purchase some vehicles. We're looking at 4 ambulances and 2 QRVs. They're quick response vehicles. I don't know if you guys have been by any car lots, but with the difficulty of getting regular cars, imagine how hard it is for them to get their vehicles. So they too would like for you to consider the ability. This would not be a purchase right now, more or less a purchase order to go ahead and get our name on the list for their vehicles using the ARP funding.
Motion to approve.
Second. It's been moved and properly second. Motion passes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Such a good job. You want to do it next?
Mr. Chairman, may I also say that by handling those 3 items the way you just did, it eliminated them from having to be part of next year's budget. We've addressed the problem now.
I can vouch it is very hard to get vehicles. I have 5 vehicles that we ordered last year that still haven't gotten here yet.
Wow.
And it is hard. I'm here because we received proposals April 6th to repair the asphalt at the transfer station. If you've been out there lately, it's very dusty if it hasn't rained, and when it does rain, it gets very muddy. We sent out 4 proposals. We sent out proposals to 4 paving contractors. Garris Grading and Paving and S.T. Wooten turned in proposals. The work is divided in Phase 1 and Phase 2, and the contractors were informed that part of Phase 1 will need to be completed on the weekend while there's no traffic. Staff is also requesting the transfer station close that Saturday, and what I would do is once it's decided what Saturday it is, obviously it will have it like a 2-3 week or longer period, so we can let everybody know, put signage up. But I would also approach GFL, who is mainly the main contractor that uses the facility on Saturday, and stay open Friday till 6 or 7 o'clock to make sure that we provide service for them, if that would be okay. And then just make sure we let everybody know that, you know, we're gonna be open longer on Friday and close on Saturday. Attached is the bid tabulation showing that Garris Grading and Paving was the lowest bid at $347,292 for both Phase 1 and Phase 2, and this includes a 10% contingency. Funds to cover this cost are from the state SCIF grant that was approved, and it was approved in this current budget year CIP from our solid waste enterprise fund. So would like approval to enter a contract with Garris Grading in the amount of $347,292.83, which includes a 10% contingency to allow the transfer station to close the Saturday the work will be carried out.
I move to approve.
I second it.
And I'd like to also say to Mr. Demery, congratulations on the work you've done at the convenience sites. You don't pop into holes and bounce out, and turning some of the buildings around so that they can see. I think that was a very smart move. Thank you.
We're not completely done with that project. There's some money in next year's budget as well. So we're continuing to upgrade the site houses as well as the asphalt work.
I think it was very pleasant and a decent thing to do.
Thank you.
All right.
We're voting.
I did make the motion that we do that. It's okay.
All right, Mr. Corley, the other items for decision have gone very smoothly, so no pressure.
All right. You can vote to approve right now if you want. So this is the last item of the evening, I guess. And this is for a housekeeping contract for all the Pitt County facilities. As you know, ECVC has done our housekeeping work for some time. They like to continue to do that work for us. And so we're bringing this renewal contract to you tonight for approval. They are asking for a 5% increase for this coming fiscal year. That is to provide some additional pay raises for their employees as well. They have intentions of raising their lowest employees up, as well as some of their other employees that work on site here as well. Year 2 and 3 would be a 3% increase. So it would be 5% the first year and 3% the following 2 years. It would be a 3-year contract. The total amounts are in your packet. The first year would go to $575,000. Around that. Year 2 would be $592, and year 3 is $610. And this includes all the facilities, including the courthouse, with the county. So asking tonight for authorization for the county manager to execute that renewal contract with ECVC.
I'd like to offer the motion.
Second. It's been moved and properly second. Thank you, Mr. Corley. If we could now move on to commissioner comments. Commissioner Ward,
No comment.
were we missing a vote? Is that, Madam Clerk?
Yes. It was slow coming up. I hit it, I pressed it twice, but it didn't do, so I just nodded.
So was it
That was a yes
a
vote
yes?
then?
Okay.
So motion passes.
unanimously.
Commissioner White?
No comment.
Commissioner Nunn? No.
I'm looking to see the trash disappear.
I think we're working on that. Commissioner McFarland?
Yeah, I just want to certainly thank our county manager and the staff of finance officer for a budget, overall budget that was presented to us. This is I've been on the commission board for a long time. This is about the best budget I've seen, and to me it was investing and have a tremendous interest in our employees. It was employee centric, and in terms of the overall market rate, market adjustment, 4% for every employee. I have never seen that. I don't know whether this has occurred, Janice, that before since I've been on the board, but this was tremendously exciting to me to see that we are really concerned about the employees and employees' morale, especially in the climate as it is now. People are leaving and you can't retain employees, but to see a budget such as this, it certainly was a thrill, very good to my heart. And so I want to thank all of you for a job well done in that area. And no tax increase. That's another important thing.
Mr. Chairman, if I'm in order, I'd like to see us adjourn.
Second. It's been moved and properly second.
I think it was excellent.
Motion passes. We are adjourned.
Good job.